In the Middle Ages, one of the great problems for rulers was public relations. How on earth do they transmit what they want to the people? How do they transmit laws? How do they transmit orders? How do they make their will known to the people? Well, most people, as you know, couldn't read and write. There was no printing press, there was no television, there was no radio, there were no newspapers. How on earth do they do it? Well, all sorts of ways. They grab any possible technique they can lay their hands on. They paint pictures, they draw pictures, they embroider pictures like the Bayeux Tapestry. They build statues. They mint coins. It's no coincidence that the king's head appears on the coins. They put up great big buildings to make everybody suitably impressed with the enormity of the king's rule. Look at the size of the Egyptian public buildings. They travel themselves. One of the great tricks of kingship is to be seen. They know who you are, and they've seen you, and they know where you are, and they know you turn up regularly. Travel, travel, travel. Quite a lot of medieval kings, they say, practically rode themselves to death, going all around the country, being seen. And it was during these travels that they had to provide justice, that they had to show everybody that everything was secure, that everything was all right. The king went on these great big progresses, and it continued into the modern period. The Tudors were great travellers and progressors. Think of how many manor houses where they tell you that Queen Elizabeth slept here, or where Henry VIII slept here, whatever. They loved progressing all over the place. Elizabeth was a vain woman. She adored doing this, making a great fuss and waving her hands, people cheering, and good Queen Bess and all the rest of it. So, there was a reason behind it. And so you have these, you could call them comic strips, I suppose. But they did have a reason, and they did have a message. And that bit about giving Harold knighthood and the swearing of the oath was absolutely invaluable, because it could be seen. This was why so many ceremonies took place in public. It was no good a few barons meeting in a hall somewhere and signing a document, assuming they could write. Nobody knew. But if it was done out in the open, or in a great big hall, or on a field, with hundreds and thousands of people there actually witnessing it for themselves, there was no argument about it. They had seen it with their own eyes, and that was proof. And it was not new. The Bayeux Tapestry was nothing like the first comic strip. As I said, go back to ancient Egypt. Look at all those pictures on the walls of pyramids. So we're talking about something 3,000 and 4,000 years old. It's as old as the hills. The Babylonians did it. Look at what the Greeks did on the frieze of the Parthenon in Athens. The Emperor Trajan built this enormous column in Rome, on which were carved the record of all his victories, Trajan's column. Think of Trafalgar Square. Is it any basically different? So there's a lot in the Bayeux Tapestry. Don't be put off by... if you look at the picture of William giving knighthood to Harold, it's very easy to snigger at the fact that, well, he doesn't look very much like a human being, does he? Yes, you can poke fun at some of the, not all the draftsmanship, but you can poke fun at some of the draftsmanship. But that's not the point, because there are times when the draftsmanship is quite remarkable. You visit Bayeux itself, go to the tapestry, and stand in front of the tapestry, that part of the tapestry, where the Norman cavalry are getting ready to advance. The drama is quite palpable. You can almost hear the beating of the hoofs on the ground. It is quite remarkable the effect that these embroideries have. Not done by military artists, these are done by ladies. In Canterbury, as far as we know, they're done by English women, not Norman women. And they're done by seamstresses in Canterbury. How did they know all about this? It's also worth noting, too, that the draftsmanship is remarkable for its sheer scale. There are something like 600 people embroidered on that tapestry. 600! There are something like 200 horses. I don't know if you've ever tried to draw a horse, but it is extremely difficult. And there's one scene in that where there's a Norman cavalry charge, and many horses obviously fall. And it is so modern. You can feel the impact of those falling horses. To this day, it is quite astounding that these women were able to do it. So don't be superior about the Bayeux Tapestry. I said, look at it from the point of view of the 11th century. Judge it from the standards of the time. Secondly, don't be afraid of the Bayeux Tapestry. You say, well, what am I going to get out of it, because all the inscriptions are in Latin? Yes, that's true. But Latin is the ancestor of English, and there are lots of Latin words which you can recognise in English today. You can make good guesses. For example, if you see Edwardus, you don't have to have an awful lot of grey cells to work out that Edwardus means Edward, or Wilhelmus means William, or Haroldus means Harold. Bully for you. Go to the top of the class. You can deduce things. You see a picture of a ship, and underneath it says navigavit. You think, what the hell does navigavit mean? But think of our English word navigator, and you've got a picture of a ship. So it seems a reasonable guess that navigavit means sailing, and you'd be dead right. So you can do a lot of Sherlock Holmes stuff as well. We have foreign words ourselves now. You shouldn't shy away from a word just because it's foreign. We have cafe, we have buffet, we have blitz, we have spaghetti, plaza, vendetta, all these foreign words strewn across English, and we're used to them. And sheer gumption. Take the word Sacramentum. Have you ever heard it? I don't suppose you have. But there is Harold, sitting on the throne with an orb in one hand and a sceptre in the other, and it says Sacramentum. Isn't it reasonable to assume that this means an oath, a coronation? So there's a lot you can get out of the Bayeux Tapestry. And don't expect to grab it all off the bat straight away. Think about it, read it, go away, and pennies will drop when you're not looking at it. And you come back and think, oh, yes, of course. Why didn't I work that out before? And there aren't all that many drawings, and there aren't all that many words. There are far more pictures than there are words. So you can get a lot out of the Bayeux Tapestry. And don't just look at the action bit in the middle. They've got a frieze at the top and they've got a frieze at the bottom. And all sorts of things are going on in those friezes. Right, legendary animals and trees and people and all the rest of it. But they use the frieze. It's as if there was some kind of roving reporter going over the battlefield, pointing his camera at evocative scenes. So you get pictures of dead men, obviously. You get pictures of the survivors pulling the chainmail tunics off the head of dead men. You see disembodied arms. You see one head up in the air. An axe has gone through that man's male collar, right through the chainmail collar one side, out the other side, and taken his head off with it. It's an astounding picture. So it's all there. It's stark, and it's rude, and it's realistic. And it's done by all these genteel ladies in Canterbury. How did they find out about it? And there are one or two rude bits as well. A gentleman with no clothes on, and clearly their mind is not on the Battle of Hastings. And these ladies carefully stitched it all. So something as dramatic and as clever and unique and old. It's 950 years old. It deserves a good look. There is a chance that the French government will lend it to us later on in the year. And if they do, I strongly suggest that you go and have a look. You might be very pleasantly surprised.